My name is Alara, and for the last 10 years, my life has been a watercolor painting left out in the rain. I am a painter by trade, or at least I was, before the colors of my own world began to bleed into one another, leaving a muted, indecipherable landscape of what used to be a life. I live in Havenwood, a city that prides itself on its ancient oaks and the soft, pearlescent mist that settles in the valleys each morning. It's a place of quiet beauty, a place where I once found endless inspiration in the shifting light and the deep, mossy greens of the forest floor. I came here with my husband, Julian, a man whose ambition was as sharp and clean as the modern houses he designed. He was all glass and steel and stark, beautiful lines, while I was all soft edges, earth tones, and the scent of turpentine. We were, I thought, a study in complementary contrasts. We built a home on a hill overlooking the city, one of his designs, of course with vast windows that were meant to let the light in, but which, over time, only seemed to magnify the emptiness within. We have a son, Leo, whose spirit is the one pure, vibrant color that has never faded. Julian's family is Old Havenwood, the kind of family whose name is carved into the stone plaques of park benches and library wings. His mother, Beatrice, is a woman sculpted from marble, elegant and cold, with a smile that never quite reached her eyes. From the moment Julian brought me home, a quiet, art school girl with paint under her nails and no lineage to speak of, I was a smudge on her otherwise pristine canvas. Her disapproval was never overt, but a subtle, constant pressure like the weight of water on stone. It was in the way she'd compliment my dress while her eyes scanned for a loose thread, or the way she'd speak of good breeding at family dinners, her gaze drifting vaguely in my direction. And Julian, my brilliant, confident Julian, would simply continue to eat, his silence a buffer that protected him, but left me exposed. It was at one such gathering, a perfectly curated Sunday brunch at Beatrice and Arthur's suffocatingly grand home, that the rain-blurred painting of my life was finally torn down the middle. The sound in that dining room was one of carefully orchestrated peace. The gentle clinking of silver against porcelain, the murmur of polite conversation, the winter sun slanting through the tall, mullioned windows, catching the dust motes dancing in the air. Beatrice was holding court, her voice a low, melodic hum, while my father-in-law, Arthur, sat at the head of the table like a handsome, silent ghost. Julian's younger sister, Chloe, picked at a croissant, her eyes downcast. And Julian, my husband, was describing the clean, sustainable lines of his latest project, his passion for his work a shield against the suffocating domesticity of it all. I was playing my part, smiling and nodding when my phone, resting in the lap of my linen dress, gave a soft, almost imperceptible buzz. I glanced down, expecting a reminder or a message from my sister. It was an unknown number. My thumb hovered over the notification, a knot of inexplicable dread tightening in my stomach. I opened it. The message was 4 words. 4 words that stopped the flow of blood in my veins. Be careful, Alara. They're watching you. I felt the air leave my lungs in a silent rush. My hand, holding my water glass, began to tremble. I set it down with meticulous care, the sound of the glass on the coaster unnaturally loud in my ears. I looked up, my gaze sweeping the room, trying to appear casual. Beatrice was smiling at me, a perfect, polished smile. Julian was still talking, oblivious. Chloe was studiously avoiding my gaze, her focus intense on the crumbs on her plate. My heart hammered against my ribs, a frantic bird trapped in a cage. Watching you. My mind, accustomed to seeing the world in details, the subtle shift of light, the texture of a surface, the hidden story in a subject's posture began to race. I saw the room differently. The ornate, gilt-framed mirror on the far wall, angled just so. A new, sleek-looking smoke detector on the ceiling that I didn't remember seeing before. A small, black box tucked discreetly among the leather-bound books on the mantelpiece, masquerading as a digital clock. Was I being paranoid? Or was I finally seeing the truth that had been there all along, hidden in the shadows of their perfect lives? I took a sip of water, the liquid cold and sharp in my throat. I forced a smile, my facial muscles feeling stiff and foreign. They wanted a reaction. The sender of that text knew it. They wanted me to unravel, to create a scene, to prove whatever narrative they were trying to build. And in that moment, something inside me, a core of resilience I thought had been eroded away by years of quiet condescension, began to harden. If they were watching me, then I would give them nothing. I would become a still life. Composed, silent, unreadable. But beneath the calm facade, a painter's I was at work, observing, cataloging, preparing. The game had changed. This wasn't just about enduring another uncomfortable family meal. It was about survival. And I needed to know who in this room had tried to warn me and why. Because that warning felt less like a threat and more like a lifeline, thrown into the murky, turbulent waters I was only just realizing I was drowning in. That night, I lay in bed, the vast, dark window of our bedroom reflecting the distant lights of Havenwood. Julian slept beside me, his breathing deep and even, the peaceful rhythm of a man untroubled by secrets. Or perhaps, the rhythm of a man who had carried them for so long they no longer weighed him down. The silence of the house was different now. It was not a peaceful silence, but a watchful one, charged with the energy of unseen eyes. My heart ached with a deep, hollow sorrow. The idea of Julian being a part of this, it was a betrayal so profound it felt like a physical wound. The man I had loved, the man I had built a life with, the father of my child. Had it all been a lie? Was our home, his architectural masterpiece, simply a beautiful, well-lit stage for my slow, monitored disintegration? When I was sure he was sound asleep, I slipped out of bed. My bare feet made no sound on the cool, polished concrete floors. I crept down the hallway to his office, a sanctuary of minimalism and order. The door was ajar. I pushed it open, a sliver at a time, my breath held tight in my chest. His laptop was on, its screen casting a cold, blue light across the Spartan room. He'd been working late. As I drew closer, my eyes fell upon a folder open on the desktop. It was labeled simply, E. Studies. E. For Alara. My hands were shaking so violently I had to grip the edge of the desk to steady myself. With a trembling finger, I clicked on the folder. It opened to reveal a grid of video files, dozens of them, each labeled with a date and a location code. Studio_10.15. Kitchen_11.02. Bedroom_11.05. My stomach churned. A wave of nausea washed over me. I felt violated, stripped bare in the most intimate, sacred spaces of my life. With a sense of morbid dread, I double-clicked the most recent file. There I was, on the screen, a ghost of myself. I was in my studio, surrounded by my canvases, the afternoon light streaming through the windows. I was talking on the phone to my sister, my back to the hidden lens. I could hear my own voice, thin and strained. "I just feel so lost, Anna," I was saying, my voice thick with unshed tears. "It's like I'm disappearing. Like the color is draining out of everything." I clicked on another. It was me, late at night in the kitchen, crying softly after a tense argument with Julian. I'd thought I was alone. I remembered that night. He had dismissed my feelings about a gallery show, calling my work a lovely hobby. I had retreated to the kitchen, my heart feeling small and bruised, and had wept in the dark. And they had captured it. Archived it. My burgeoning anger was tempered by a chilling discovery. As I clicked through the files, I noticed discrepancies. A clip of me looking exhausted and tearful, dated from a week ago, was edited to appear as if it had happened on the same day I'd had a cheerful phone call with a friend. My clothes were different. They weren't just recording, they were curating. They were crafting a story, piece by piece, twisting my moments of vulnerability into a portrait of an unstable, erratic woman. But for what purpose? To what end? Was it for a divorce? A custody battle? The thought of them using this against me, of taking Leo from me, sent a shard of ice through my heart. I stood there for a long time, the cold blue light of the screen illuminating the silent, sterile room. The pain was immense, a physical weight in my chest. But as the initial shock subsided, it was replaced by something else. Not the hot, flashing anger of revenge, but a cold, clear certainty. The quiet, accommodating Alara, the woman who absorbed passive aggressions and smiled through veiled insults, was gone. She had been recorded, archived, and in a way, killed. In her place, someone new was beginning to form. Someone who understood that to protect her child and reclaim her life, she could no longer be a watercolor. She had to become stone. I went back to our bedroom and slid under the covers. Julian stirred, but didn't wake. I lay there, motionless, staring into the darkness, but for the first time in a very long time, I was not lost. I had a direction. My own quiet, methodical plan began to take shape, line by line, in the canvas of my mind. The next morning, I called the gallery that represented me and told them I needed to take an indefinite leave from my upcoming solo show. Creative exhaustion, I said, the lie tasting like ash in my mouth. I needed time. I needed space, away from the watchful eyes in my own home. My studio, once my sanctuary, now felt like a cage. My new studio became a quiet corral in the Havenwood Public Library. Surrounded by the gentle rustle of turning pages and the scent of old paper, I felt a sense of anonymity and safety I hadn't realized I'd been missing. Using their public computers, I purchased a high-capacity, encrypted external hard drive. For 3 days, in the dead of night while Julian slept, I tiptoed to his office and meticulously copied every single file from the Studies folder. I made backups, stored them in a secure cloud account under a pseudonym, and hid the hard drive in a hollowed-out art history textbook. The process was painstaking, my heart pounding with every click, but it was my first act of defiance. I was taking back the narrative. As I reviewed the footage in the sterile quiet of the library, my sorrow began to crystallize into a hard, protective shell. Then I found it. The recording that shattered the last vestiges of my grief and replaced it with a diamond-hard resolve. It was a video from Leo's playroom. The camera was hidden in a teddy bear on a high shelf. Beatrice was sitting on the floor with him, building a tower of blocks. Her voice was as sweet and smooth as honey. "You know, sweetheart," she said, placing a red block on top of a blue one. "Mommy has been feeling very tired lately. Her colors are all mixed up." Leo looked at her with his big, trusting eyes. "Sometimes," she continued, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper, "when people get that tired, they need to go away for a long, long rest. To a quiet place. And then this house would just be for you and Daddy and me." My blood ran cold. This wasn't just manipulation. It was a poisoning of the well. They were using my son, his innocent, malleable heart, as a tool in their campaign. That was the line. The one they had crossed from which there was no return. This was no longer just about me. It was about protecting Leo from their quiet, insidious cruelty. The next day, I found her. A lawyer named Maria Albright. Her office was in a modest, older building downtown, filled with thriving plants and shelves of worn books. She was calm, empathetic, and listened without interruption as I laid out the story, my voice steady despite the tremor in my hands. When I played a short, unedited clip of Beatrice with Leo, MS. Albright's gentle expression hardened. "They are not just building a narrative, Alara," she said, her voice firm. "They are committing a crime. This is illegal surveillance, and what she is doing to your son is a form of psychological abuse." For the first time, I felt a flicker of hope. I wasn't just a hysterical wife, I was a victim of a calculated plot, and I had a right to fight back. The universe, it seemed, agreed. A few days later, while helping Leo clean his art supplies, a folded piece of tracing paper fell from his sketchbook. The handwriting was a graceful, looping cursive I didn't recognize. "He's trying to take him from you. Don't let him." My breath caught. It was the second warning. The same ally, watching from the inside. That evening, I sat on the edge of Leo's bed, the scent of his lavender soap and clean pajamas a comforting anchor in my swirling world. "Sweetheart," I began gently, stroking his hair. "Has Grandma been telling you stories about Mommy?" He hesitated, his small face clouding with confusion and fear. He glanced toward his bedroom door, as if afraid of being overheard. She said you might have to go to a special hospital for tired painters, he whispered, his lower lip trembling. And that I should be ready to be brave for Daddy. I pulled him into my arms, holding him tight as my own heart broke. I assured him it wasn't true, that I would never, ever leave him, that Grandma's stories were just mistaken. But I saw the seed of doubt they had planted in his eyes, and my resolve solidified into steel. With a note and Leo's testimony, Ms. Albright filed for an emergency temporary protection order, focusing on the evidence of emotional manipulation. The court granted it, suspending Beatrice's contact with Leo pending a further hearing. It was a small, quiet victory, but it felt monumental. The retaliation was swift and ugly. I awoke one morning to find my garden studio, my beautiful glass-walled sanctuary, vandalized. My canvases were slashed, my paint smeared across the floor, and on the main glass panel, scrawled in thick, black paint, was the word, unfit. Leo saw it before I could steer him away. He just stood there, his small hand in mine, staring at the wreckage. I knelt beside him, my voice miraculously calm. Someone very sad and angry did this, honey. It has nothing to do with you or me. But inside, I was shaking with a cold fury. I knew who had done it. It was Beatrice's desperate, clumsy rage made manifest. But what Beatrice didn't know was that I had recently installed a small wildlife camera, hidden in the foliage, hoping to catch a family of deer that frequented our garden. When I checked the footage, there she was. A figure in a dark coat, moving with frantic energy in the pre-dawn light, her face contorted with a venom I had never seen before. She had provided me with my next piece of evidence. Ms. Albright amended our filing, and the court granted a full restraining order against Beatrice. She could no longer come near me, Leo, or our home. The fragile peace in our house shattered completely. That night, Julian confronted me, his usual polished composure gone, replaced by a raw, defensive anger. "You are tearing this family apart, Alara," he accused, his voice echoing in the minimalist space. I looked at him, really looked at him, for the first time in months. I saw not the man I married, but a stranger, a co-conspirator in my own emotional demolition. "This family was already broken, Julian," I said, my voice quiet but unyielding. "I'm just refusing to be buried in the wreckage." He saw the change in me then, the absence of fear, and it seemed to unnerve him more than any tears or accusations ever could. He knew he was losing control. The final piece of the puzzle was delivered by the most unlikely of sources. A few days later, Chloe, Julian's sister, sent me a text. "Can we meet? Alone?" We met at a small, riverside cafe, far from the polished world of Havenwood's elite. Chloe looked smaller, more fragile than I'd ever seen her. She twisted a paper napkin in her hands, avoiding my eyes. "I can't do this anymore, Alara," she whispered, her voice choked with guilt. "I can't be a part of it." She finally looked at me, her eyes swimming with tears. "It was Mum's idea, years ago. After Leo was born, when you had that rough time, she called it her contingency plan. She was always afraid you'd, I don't know, fall apart and tarnish the family name." My heart grew heavy. This wasn't a recent development. It was a long-laid trap, waiting for me to falter. Chloe reached into her bag and pulled out a slim USB drive. She roped Julian's senior partner into it, too. Serafina Vance. They called it Project Nightingale, like you were some fragile bird they needed to keep in a cage. She pushed the drive across the table. "These are emails. Plans. It's all there. I'm so sorry, Alara." I was scared. Mum controls my finances, my apartment, but watching what they're doing to Leo the First can't live with it. I took the drive, my fingers closing around the cool metal. It felt heavy, laden with the weight of years of deceit. "Thank you, Chloe," I said, my voice hoarse. It was the only thing I could say. In that moment, she wasn't Julian's sister or Beatrice's daughter. She was just a woman who had chosen to do the right thing, however late. I now had the architecture of their entire conspiracy. Premeditated, detailed, and utterly damning. The quiet, personal battle for my son and my sanity was about to become something much bigger. My plan had been to protect myself, to secure my freedom. But now, with the full scope of their cruelty laid bare, I knew that wasn't enough. Justice required the truth to be brought into the light, not just for me, but for anyone else who might have been caught in their web. And I knew the perfect place to do it. Instead of a bitter family dinner, I chose a different stage. Havenwood's art community was small and tight-knit. A friend of mine, the owner of a chic downtown gallery, was hosting a private opening for a new sculptor. It was a major event on the city's social calendar, one Julian and his family would be obligated to attend to maintain appearances. It was the perfect venue, public, yet intimate, a place where aesthetics and truth could collide. I spoke to my friend, the gallery owner, explaining a sanitized version of events that I needed to present some personal information to my family in a setting where they couldn't simply walk away. She trusted me. She agreed to let me use the gallery's main projector, which was usually reserved for displaying digital art. The night of the opening, I dressed with purpose. A simple, elegant black dress, my hair pulled back, my face clear of all but the most minimal makeup. I was not a victim seeking pity. I was a narrator, preparing to tell a story. In my clutch was not the USB drive from Chloe, but a new one I had prepared, a curated presentation of the facts. The gallery was buzzing with conversation and the clinking of wine glasses. I saw them across the room: Beatrice, looking regal and untouchable, Arthur, a silent shadow at her side, and Julian, handsome and charming, networking effortlessly. He caught my eye and gave me a tight, strained smile, an unspoken warning. He had no idea what was coming. Halfway through the evening, the gallery owner stepped up to a small microphone. And now, she announced, we have a special, unscheduled presentation by a dear friend and one of Havenwood's most beloved artists, Alara. A murmur went through the crowd. I walked to the front of the room, my heart beating a steady, determined rhythm. I didn't take the microphone. I simply nodded to the tech booth where my friend stood waiting. The lights dimmed. The large white wall behind me flickered to life. The first images were of my own work, luminous, misty landscapes of Havenwood, the very beauty they had tried to poison. Then, the screen went black and an audio file played. It was Beatrice's voice, clear and cold, from a recording I'd found in the deepest recesses of the studies folder. She's fragile. She'll destroy herself. We just need to ensure we document it properly for when the time comes. A confused silence fell over the room. Then came the split screens. On one side, their edited videos, I'm looking distraught, crying, pacing. On the other side, the raw, unedited footage. The meltdown was revealed to be me, weeping quietly while looking at an old photograph of my mother, who had passed away years ago. The erratic pacing was me, anxiously trying to work out a complex composition for a painting. The manipulations were stark, undeniable. The room was utterly silent, the air thick with shock. I saw Julian's face, pale and stricken. Beatrice's perfectly composed mask began to crack. She shot me a look of pure hatred. Then, for the first time in as long as I could remember, Arthur spoke. His voice, though quiet, carried across the silent room. Beatrice, what have you done? He asked, his gaze fixed on the screen, his face a canvas of dawning horror. Julian started moving toward the tech booth, his intent clear, but the gallery's discreet security guard stepped into his path, shaking his head. The final slide appeared on the screen. It wasn't a video. It was the email Chloe had given me, from Julian to Serafina Vance, the head of Project Nightingale. The subject line read, "The Nightingale is almost ready to be caged." The body of the email was short and chilling. "The portfolio is nearly complete. Full custody will be a formality. Then the house, the boy, it all comes back to us. As planned." A collective gasp went through the room. Several of Julian's business associates simply turned and walked out. Beatrice looked as though she had been turned to stone. Julian just stared at me, his face a mixture of fury and disbelief. He had been so sure of his power, of his control. I didn't say a word. I didn't need to. The evidence spoke for itself. I turned and walked out of the gallery, leaving them in the wreckage of the truth. As I stepped out into the cool night air, my phone buzzed. It was an email from MS. Albright. The subject, Victory. The judge, having reviewed the emergency brief containing the new evidence, had granted me immediate, sole emergency custody of Leo and exclusive use of the family home. I leaned against the cold brick of the building and took a deep, shuddering breath. It wasn't a feeling of triumph, not of revenge. It was a hollow, aching relief. The feeling of a long, terrible fever finally breaking. I was free. But I knew, with a chilling certainty, that the war was not yet over. The monsters had been unmasked, but monsters do not simply vanish when the lights come on. I returned not to the cold, glass house on the hill, but to my little garden studio. I had spent the day before the gallery event cleaning it, repairing what I could. It was my space, my sanctuary, and I needed to reclaim it. As I unlocked the door, a sliver of white on the floor caught my eye. It was an envelope, slid under the door. My name wasn't on it. My hands trembled as I picked it up. Inside was not a letter, but a single, professionally printed 8x10 photograph. It was a picture of me, asleep in my bed in the main house, taken from the foot of the bed. The angle was intimate, terrifyingly close. I turned it over. On the back, written in an elegant, sharp script, were 7 words. You can't paint over the truth. Someone had been in my house. In my bedroom. While I slept. The restraining orders, the legal victory, they were just pieces of paper. The security of my own home had been breached, not with force, but with a stealthy, silent confidence that chilled me to the bone. This wasn't Beatrice's clumsy rage or Julian's panicked lashing out. This felt different. Colder. More professional. It was the work of Serafina Vance. I backed out of the studio, my heart hammering. I immediately called MS. Albright, then the police. They came, they took a report, they dusted for prints, but we all knew it was a message, not a mistake. It was designed to be untraceable, to instill fear, to remind me that even in my victory, I was not safe. The next few weeks were a blur of legal filings and heightened security. I had every lock in the house changed. I had a state-of-the-art security system installed, with cameras covering every angle of the property. Julian, meanwhile, began his own quiet campaign, painting himself as the victim of an unstable, vengeful wife. But I refused to engage in the court of public opinion. My fight was in the actual courts, with the truth as my only weapon. Using the Project Nightingale emails MS. Albright delved deeper into Serafina Vance. She wasn't just Julian's partner, she was his university sweetheart, a woman he had supposedly left behind years ago. A search of property records revealed something that made my blood run cold. Julian had initiated a quitclaim sale of our home a week before the gallery opening, transferring the title to a holding company. A company owned by Serafina Vance. The plan had always been to leave me with nothing. The evidence of conspiracy, the illegal surveillance, the perjury, the emotional abuse of a minor, and now, the fraudulent property transfer was a mountain. MS. Albright filed a comprehensive motion with the court and a formal complaint with the State Bar Association. The resolution, when it came, was not a dramatic courtroom showdown. It was a series of quiet, official notifications. An emergency injunction blocked the sale of the house. The Bar Association launched a full investigation, immediately suspending both Julian and Serafina. Faced with irrefutable evidence of perjury and conspiracy, Beatrice accepted a plea deal that included a permanent restraining order, a significant financial settlement for damages, and court-mandated therapy. The final victory came in a thick manila envelope from the court. The documents inside confirmed it. I was awarded full, sole custody of Leo. The house was mine, free and clear. The conspiracy had been dismantled, not with a bang, but with the slow, relentless grinding of the wheels of justice. Months passed. The autumn mist of Havenwood gave way to the crisp, clean light of winter. I sold the glass house on the hill, that beautiful, haunted cage. With the proceeds, I bought a small, older home on a quiet, tree-lined street with a sprawling, slightly wild garden and a detached carriage house that was perfect for a studio. Leo thrived. The shadows left his eyes. His laughter, bright and clear, filled our new, smaller home with a warmth the old house never had. He drew pictures of us, smiling, under a big yellow sun. One afternoon, a letter arrived. The handwriting was Chloe's. It was a short, simple note. An apology, not for her fear, but for her silence. It ended with, "I hope you and Leo find all the peace you deserve. He is lucky to have a mother who would burn down the world for him." I folded the note and placed it in a small wooden box. A gentle, quiet reconciliation. A closing of a painful chapter. The threats had stopped. The fear had receded, leaving behind not a scar, but a newfound layer of strength. My life was my own again. The colors were returning, brighter and more vibrant than before. I spent my days in my new studio, the scent of oil paint and turpentine once again a smell of comfort, not of escape. The light streamed in through the old, wavy glass of the windows, dappling the wooden floor. I was working on a new series of paintings, but my first piece in this new life was a self-portrait. I painted myself looking directly out of the canvas. My expression was not smiling, but it was not sad. It was calm. My eyes, I hoped, held the quiet wisdom of someone who had walked through a great and terrible darkness and had not been consumed by it. I had learned that true strength isn't the absence of fear, but the choice to act in spite of it. It's the quiet, daily act of choosing to pick up a brush, of mixing a new color, of painting your own light back into the world, stroke by painstaking stroke, until the canvas is no longer a reflection of your pain, but a testament to your survival. And it was, I realized, the most beautiful thing I had ever created.